It started not with an argument or a screaming match, but with a laugh. I am Imani, and at 34 years old, I had spent the last decade building a top-tier financial security firm in Atlanta. I thought my life was perfectly secure, especially my 10-year marriage to my husband Marcus. He was a senior director at a venture capital fund, sharp, charismatic, and supposedly my biggest supporter. But that illusion shattered completely on a quiet Tuesday evening. I had accidentally left my phone recording in his home office after using it to dictate some project notes earlier that day. When I retrieved it and pressed play, hoping to catch where I left off, I did not hear my own voice. I heard Marcus. And then I heard another voice joining him in a low, mocking chuckle. It was Sarah, the white wife of his younger brother David. They were not just talking, they were laughing about me. They were laughing as they detailed a meticulous plan to drain my company assets, filter my retirement accounts through offshore shells, and frame me for tax fraud. They thought I was completely oblivious. They thought the tech CEO was too busy loving her husband to notice the knife he was pressing into her back. Sitting there in the dark living room with their voices playing through my headphones, I did not cry. 10 years of marriage, of building a home and a life together, crumbled into dust right in front of me, but not a single tear fell. Instead, a cold and absolute calmness washed over my entire body. They thought I was a fool they could easily discard. They had no idea that my silence was not ignorance. It was preparation. I decided right then and there that I would not just protect myself. I was going to take back every single thing they planned to steal and leave them with absolutely nothing. Before I share exactly how I destroyed their lives, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit the like button and subscribe if you have ever had to look a betrayer in the eye and smile while secretly plotting their downfall. The betrayal cut deeper because of how picture-perfect we looked to the outside world. We lived in a stunning modern estate in Buckhead, surrounded by other affluent African-American professionals. To everyone else, Marcus and I were the ultimate power couple, hosting charity galas and mentoring young entrepreneurs. But behind the imported mahogany doors and the designer furnishings, my reality had just become a psychological war zone. I knew I had to act normal. I had to sleep next to the man who was actively conspiring to ruin my life, and I had to smile at family dinners with the woman who was helping him do it. The game had officially changed, and I was ready to play. 2 days later, we were seated in a private dining room at one of the most exclusive restaurants in Midtown Atlanta, celebrating my 34th birthday. The ambiance was pure luxury. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over the long mahogany table, while a private sommelier poured vintage champagne into delicate fluted glasses. Our family and closest friends were gathered around us, a sea of tailored designer suits and custom silk dresses. To anyone looking through the floor-to-ceiling glass doors, we were the very picture of Black excellence and familial devotion. I sat at the head of the table wearing a fitted emerald gown, playing the role of the radiant birthday girl to absolute perfection. Marcus sat right beside me, holding my hand under the heavy linen tablecloth. His thumb rubbed soothing circles across my knuckles, exactly the way he had done since our college days. He leaned over, brushing his lips against my ear, and whispered that I looked absolutely breathtaking tonight. The warmth in his voice was so convincing, so perfectly modulated, that for a fraction of a second, my heart betrayed me and fluttered with familiar affection. Then my mind snapped back to reality. I remembered the recording. I remembered that exact same voice, laughing with another woman about how easily he was going to drain my business accounts and leave me with nothing but tax liabilities. I smiled back at him, squeezing his hand gently, letting him believe his masterful performance was working flawlessly. Across the table, David laughed at a joke someone made, completely oblivious to the dynamics shifting around him. David was Marcus's younger brother, a man who had always lived comfortably in Marcus's shadow. He was sweet, but entirely passive, relying heavily on both my husband and his own wife to make his decisions. Next to him sat Sarah. She wore a pristine white dress that contrasted sharply with her dark, calculating nature. She was busy playing the perfect supportive sister-in-law, chatting amicably with my mother, and pouring water for the guests. Every time she looked at Marcus, I caught the micro-expressions, the brief, lingering glances, the subtle shifts in her posture. If I had not heard the recording, I would have never noticed them. But now those small details were glaringly obvious, red flags flashing right in front of my face. When the dessert course was served, Marcus stood up and gently tapped his silver spoon against his crystal champagne glass. The room quieted down immediately, turning their attention to the man of the hour. Marcus looked down at me with an expression of such profound adoration that it genuinely made my stomach turn. He began to speak, his voice projecting confidently to our guests. He talked about my dedication, my brilliance, and how he had watched me build my technology security firm from a tiny startup into an industry powerhouse. He called me his queen, his anchor, and the undisputed love of his life. He told our friends that every successful man needs a stronger woman standing beside him. Every single word was a calculated performance, designed to maintain his pristine public image as the ultimate supportive husband. Then he reached into his tailored jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek black velvet box. The room erupted in soft gasps of anticipation as he popped it open to reveal a stunning diamond necklace. The stones caught the ambient light, dazzling and completely flawless. He stepped behind my chair, unclasped the delicate jewelry, and gently placed it around my neck. The diamonds felt like solid ice against my skin, cold and heavy, like a chain he was slowly tightening around my throat. He leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to my bare shoulder, whispering, "Happy birthday, my love," for everyone to hear. The crowd clapped and cheered, raising their glasses in our honor. I reached up to touch the diamonds, pasting a look of overwhelming gratitude and joyful surprise on my face. "Thank you, baby," I said, making sure my voice trembled just enough to sound deeply moved by his gesture. That was when Sarah decided it was her turn to take the stage. She stood up from her seat next to David, lifting her glass high, with a bright and beaming smile plastered across her face. "I would like to propose a toast," she announced, her voice ringing clear and melodious across the dining room. "To Imani and Marcus. Looking at you two tonight reminds us all of what true partnership really means. You support each other, you build each other up, and you show us that true love can conquer any obstacle in the corporate world and beyond. Here is to the strongest couple I know and to many more years of health, wealth, and unbroken happiness." "Hear, hear," echoed around the table as glasses clinked together in a chorus of celebration. David looked up at his wife with blind affection, completely unaware that the woman standing beside him was sharing a bed with his own brother. I raised my own glass and locked eyes directly with Sarah across the table. Her smile did not waver for a second, but there was a distinct glint in her eyes, a subtle arrogance of a predator who firmly believes she has won the ultimate prize. She was toasting to my wealth while actively plotting to steal it. She was drinking to the longevity of my marriage while secretly dismantling it behind closed doors. The sheer audacity of her standing there praising my partnership with Marcus while knowing exactly what they had planned for me was staggering. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my champagne, never breaking eye contact with her. The vintage wine tasted bitter on my tongue, but I kept the soft, appreciative smile firmly on my face. My mind was racing, replaying the audio file I had memorized by heart. I remembered Sarah suggesting they use a specific shell company in the Cayman Islands to hide the assets they planned to strip from my firm. I remembered Marcus agreeing, calling her brilliant, and promising her that they would be celebrating together in Paris by next summer. And here they were, currently surrounding me with expensive gifts and public declarations of loyalty, wrapping their treacherous betrayal in velvet boxes and sparkling champagne toasts. They were so utterly confident in their deception. They truly believed they were the smartest people in the room playing a high-stakes game of chess, while I was completely blindfolded and stumbling in the dark. But as the dinner continued and the loud laughter flowed around me, my internal resolve only hardened into steel. I decided to let them have their grand performance tonight. Let them drink the expensive wine and wear their fake smiles. They were celebrating a victory they had not yet won, and counting money that was never going to belong to them. I touched the cold diamonds resting on my collarbone and made a silent, unbreakable vow. I was going to let them build this fragile house of cards as high as possible. I would play the loving, oblivious wife flawlessly until the very last second. And when the timing was absolutely perfect, I would not just knock their house of cards down. I would set it on fire, lock the doors, and watch them scramble in the ashes. The grand birthday celebration eventually wound down, leaving us to return to the quiet isolation of our Buckhead estate. Marcus had consumed just enough vintage scotch to ensure a heavy, deep sleep. I lay perfectly still in our custom king-sized bed, listening to the steady, rhythmic rise and fall of his breathing. The expensive diamond necklace he had clasped around my throat just hours ago now sat on my vanity, catching the faint moonlight filtering through the curtains. I waited until the house was entirely silent, until the digital clock on my nightstand flashed 2 in the morning. Then I slowly slid out from under the heavy silk duvet. My bare feet hit the cold, hardwood floor, but I barely registered the chill. I moved through the dark hallways of our home like a ghost, floating silently past the framed wedding photos and the expensive artwork we had chosen together. I did not turn on a single light. I navigated the familiar layout purely by memory until I reached the heavy oak door of his home office. I slipped inside and locked the door behind me. The room was pitch black except for the faint ambient light from the street lamps outside. I sat down in his leather ergonomic chair and powered on his personal laptop. The screen flickered to life, casting a harsh, bluish-white glow across my face. If anyone had been in the room to see me, they would have found a woman entirely devoid of expression. My features were completely blank, a mask of frozen stone. Marcus was a senior director at a venture capital fund, and he considered himself a master of security. He used complex biometric locks, two-factor authentications, and rotating encryption keys, but he had forgotten one crucial detail. He was married to the founder and chief executive officer of a top-tier technology security firm. I did not just use cybersecurity software, I built it from the ground up. Bypassing his defenses took me exactly 12 minutes. As I breached the final firewall and gained full administrative access to his personal hard drive, a chilling realization washed over me. He lied to me about our vows. He lied to me about our late-night conversations. He lied to me about his late nights at the corporate office. He lied to me about his devotion. He lied to me about love. He lied to me about money. He lied to me about absolutely everything. The words echoed in my mind like a rhythmic drumbeat syncing with the steady clicking of my fingers on his keyboard. Every file I opened, every hidden folder I unencrypted was another nail driven deep into the coffin of our 10-year marriage. I found the offshore accounts first. They were buried under a labyrinth of shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands and the British Virgin Islands. The primary holding company was registered under a name that made my blood run ice cold. It was an anagram of Sarah's maiden name combined with his middle name. They were not even trying to be fully untraceable. They were just arrogant. I opened the digital ledgers and tracked the flow of money. For the past 14 months, Marcus had been slowly, systematically draining funds from our joint investment portfolios. He was careful taking amounts just under the threshold that would trigger an automatic alert from our wealth manager. He was bleeding our shared assets dry and funneling the capital directly into the offshore shell company. He lied to me about our financial goals. He lied to me about his bonuses. He lied to me about the market downturns he claimed had impacted our portfolio. He lied to me about love. He lied to me about money. He lied to me about everything. I dug deeper, routing my search through his archived emails and hidden communication channels. That was when I found the blueprints for my destruction. Marcus and Sarah were not just stealing my personal wealth. They were actively plotting a hostile takeover of my company. Sarah, with her background as an independent financial advisor, had mapped out a strategy to short the stock of my security firm. They had drafted fraudulent documents designed to make it look like I was embezzling company funds and evading federal taxes. They planned to leak these fabricated documents to the board of directors and the federal authorities simultaneously. The goal was to force me out in a catastrophic public scandal tank the company valuation, and then have Marcus step in as the concerned husband holding power of attorney to sell off my patents for pennies on the dollar. I sat in the dark reading the exact emails where they laughed about my blind trust in him. I read messages where Sarah called me a workaholic fool who was too busy writing code to realize her empire was being stolen from right under her nose. I read Marcus's replies, where he agreed with her, promising her that I would be left completely destitute, facing federal prison time, while they enjoyed the spoils of my lifelong hard work. The sheer calculated malice of their plan was breathtaking. They did not just want to leave me. They wanted to destroy me. They wanted to strip away my dignity, my reputation, and my freedom. He lied to me about his pride in my achievements. He lied to me about his respect for my intellect. He lied to me about being my partner in life. He lied to me about love. He lied to me about money. He lied to me about everything. I did not shed a single tear. The woman who had loved Marcus, the woman who had stood beside him at the altar and promised him, forever died right there in that dark office, illuminated only by the harsh glare of his laptop screen. In her place, a completely different person emerged. A woman made of absolute logic and unyielding vengeance. I pulled a secure encrypted flash drive from my pocket and inserted it into the computer. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I initiated a massive data transfer. I copied every single bank record, every offshore wire receipt, every fraudulent document, and every incriminating email. I mirrored his entire hard drive, creating a perfect, pristine copy of his betrayal. I watched the progress bar slowly fill, downloading the evidence that would soon become his ultimate undoing. The silence of the house was profound, broken only by the faint hum of the computer processor. I thought about the man sleeping upstairs in my bed. I thought about the elaborate birthday dinner he had just hosted, the expensive champagne, the diamond necklace, and the flawless performance he had given to our friends and family. He was a sociopath, wrapping his greed in the guise of a loving husband. But he had made a fatal miscalculation. He had brought a knife to a war against a woman who built fortresses for a living. He lied to me about his character. He lied to me about his soul. He lied to me about his humanity. He lied to me about love. He lied to me about money. He lied to me about everything. When the data transfer was 100% complete, I safely ejected the flash drive and slipped it back into my pocket. I carefully erased all digital footprints of my intrusion, leaving the system logs looking exactly as they had before I bypassed them. I powered down the laptop and sat in the pitch-black office for one final moment, letting the darkness envelop me. I had everything I needed. The trap they had spent 14 months setting for me was now entirely in my hands. I stood up, unlocked the office door, and walked silently back down the hallway. When I slid back into our bed, Marcus shifted slightly, his arm reaching out blindly in his sleep to drape heavily across my waist. I did not flinch. I did not pull away. I lay there staring up at the dark ceiling, feeling the cold metal of the flash drive hidden safely inside my silk pajama pocket. My breathing matched his slow calm and perfectly controlled. The midnight investigation was over. The execution phase was about to begin. The morning sun crested over the Atlanta skyline, casting a warm, deceptive light across our bedroom. When Marcus finally stirred, I was already dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, sipping my black coffee and reviewing a digital tablet. I watched him stretch, his muscles rippling under the high thread count sheets, playing the part of the handsome, devoted husband waking up to his successful wife. He smiled at me, a lazy, affectionate grin that made my stomach churn with physical revulsion. I smiled back. I walked over to the bed, leaned down, and pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead, telling him to have a wonderful day at the fund. My voice did not shake. My hands did not tremble. The flash drive containing the blueprint of my utter destruction was already locked securely inside a biometric safe hidden behind my closet mirror. As soon as Marcus drove his imported sports car out of our gated driveway, I headed straight to my company headquarters. I did not go to my corner office on the top floor. Instead, I bypassed the executive suites and took the private elevator down to the sub-level server room. This was my sanctuary, a heavily air conditioned, windowless bunker where my most sensitive